Hello, legends, and welcome to Blunt Force Healing Podcast, episode 298. And the video update is number 76. This update will be fairly short because today I already wrote the blog post a little bit old style in old order. Blog first, video update second, and I already named it one of those days, which basically refers to one of days that probably many of you know happen in our lives where we reach the point of evening time and we reflect on all those 10, 12 hours from the moment we woke up, just to realize that we are having very hard time to recall any significant moment of that day. So basically, like we did nothing or nothing happened literally during that day. Sometimes it's from boredom, sometimes we are too focused on things that we do that we completely get into zone and then forget to celebrate it or in some form memorize it in our brains, and then in the end of the day we feel like we did nothing. And sometimes it's just that we really did nothing. So it's very hard to say because today I woke up feeling quite under the weather, as the Irish and British people like to say. Not sure how common it is in other English speaking countries, but under the weather means basically you're feeling sick or just bad, usually during any infection or whatever kind of cold, virus, something like that. And already yesterday, I think I wrote and even said on the podcast that after my beach run, my barefoot run, I felt so good for first half an hour, maybe an hour. And later on, I started feeling weakness and something settling in, like, some infection or whatever tried to get me. And in the evening, I started feeling a little bit of sore throat, but I decided to kind of let it go and recover during the night. But unfortunately, in the morning, I felt similar, if not worse to some extent. I started working normally, being online at work, but after a couple of hours, I decided to sign off because I said to my colleagues that there's no point in me being online. I'm not being useful, not being efficient, and I had terrible headache that was definitely hitting me hard and making focus impossible to achieve. So instead, I went to bed and tried to get back on my feet. Despite not working and doing that kind of stuff, I still managed to do a couple of calls that were waiting to be completed, I would say, on the private live side. And they were not super important per se, so they didn't require my focus too much, but they were important enough to sort things out from the backlog. So I decided to give it a shot, and I think I managed them well, and they were effective. And one once the once my wife brought Julian back from soccer summer camp, it was fourth day. tomorrow is the last day, we decided to drive to Bundoran to get our bikes back. So, for those of you that don't know the blog and the podcast very well, we have about 3 or 4 bikes, of which all of them were sitting in the garden for quite a long time while we were still in Kilcock. And they were in the rainy weather, cold weather, all the winter they were out, so they really degraded, got rusty, and in a bad condition, and we didn't maintain them. Then we moved to Donegal, and we basically just lift and shifted that set of bikes to Donegal, to the new garden. They stayed there for a couple of months until I think about Christmas time, just before Christmas time, when, or it was probably a bit of autumn, when my father-in-law, out of boredom and looking at those bikes, decided to give them a little wipe and grease. So one or two got, well, all of them got the wipe and a bit of maintenance, but it was just a scratching of the surface of what they needed. But he could ride one of them, so that was the whole point, to use it. And it was fine, but obviously it was just a low key maintenance. Then they stayed a little bit under the covers that I bought, but the covers were crappy. They were easy to tear, and with that windy weather, they were not the best choice. So after some time, we got the proper garden shed, and then they were moved in there. And one of the bikes, the newest one and in the best shape, we got dropped to bike stop in Bundoran. It was kind of refreshed, the cables were checked, the chain was replaced, and a couple of adjustments made. Then my wife found some recipe on YouTube about how you can de-rust, especially the surface rust, with just soda and some vinegar, I think. And she used that. It actually worked very, very well. So the bike looked decent, and he got in the shed in a decent condition, I would say, for the time that it spent outside. But the rest of the bikes were still waiting for their turn, and we dropped them last week to the same shop, and we just decided to go today and pick them up and give them a test drive or test ride. So we did like 6 kilometers spin, which was very short. We wanted to do a little bit more, but again, I wasn't feeling good still, and it was a very rainy weather in Bundoran, so we got soaking wet. As we got back to the car, I still had to mount the rack and the bikes to get them back to our house. So eventually, I think that wasn't the best idea, because after that I felt actually worse than before we drove to Bundoran. So, but you can't turn back time. So that was probably the highlight of the day. The rest of it was mainly focused on work in the morning, and then a bit of tasks in during the day, and that's it. I don't recall what happened in between, and this is probably the most disappointing when you have one of those days when you feel like you did something, but you also feel like you did nothing. Tomorrow is the last day of Julian's summer camp, and we decided to pick Julian with his friend, school friend, for a play date at our house. So it will be probably a bit noisy day. The guys will be spending a lot of time probably on the console, and I need to make sure that they have everything they need, like the meal and to be cared for a little bit, because Julian already was at their house some time ago, and it was also a pleasant experience for Julian. So I want to make sure that it's a pleasant experience for his friend too. Other than that, tomorrow's Friday. I'm not sure if I'll be able to sign in for a work day. I'll see in the morning how I feel. If not, I'll just pass the duties to somebody else and try to recover for the rest of Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Saturday is a good day in terms of the milestone. It will be 300 days of that blog. So 300 days straight of writing and recording the podcast. I'd like to do something, some like a significant change, but to be honest, I'm thinking about it and I still have no idea what I could do. So if you have any feedback, I appreciate it. You can drop it in the comments on YouTube or send it over Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I'd highly appreciate if you can point out maybe some improvements that can be made. Of course, I can't just out of the blue in 2 days organize the proper YouTube studio and increase quality to the studio quality, but if the feedback or suggestions will be in a reasonable way achievable, then I will definitely consider them to be implemented. That's it for today. We are almost 13 minutes in, so that was short and sweet. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll wrap up now. Hopefully tomorrow I'll feel better and give you another long and packed episode with some value in it. For the time being, thanks a lot for watching, and see you tomorrow.